to go ahead and get started with the Engineering and Operations Committee meeting. It's going to be a little different, though, because the chair, Director Alvarez, is having some time issues right now, but he will be here in about 15 minutes into the meeting. Rather than wait for him, we're going to go ahead and get started and a little bit out of order. So for now, I'll call the meeting to order. And could someone take the roll to see if we have a quorum here?
I will do that. Chair Williams.
I'm here.
President Deere.
Here.
And do we go on with Director Houston?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and Director Gray? Absent. And Director Alvarez? Absent.
Okay. So we do have, since both, oh, wait a minute. Both Director Deere and I are here. We do have a quorum for the meeting since Director Deere is the alternate. However, we are going to change the order of the agenda a bit, and I will do that as we go. And I'll have to ask Barcab to help me out here when we get going, okay?
Okay, do we want to verify whether there are any public comments?
Yes, we will. We will do that right now.
Okay, so do we have any public comments, Board Secretary?
Not through the ASILA program, maybe through, we can ask and see if there's anyone online that would like to speak.
Okay, do we have anyone online who would like to speak? And if you could monitor that for me, I do not have the application up just yet.
I think we're good to go.
Okay, it appears that we have no public comments. Director Williams.
How about presentations?
Okay, presentations. We have no presentations for today's meeting.
Okay, now here's where we go out of order. Like I indicated that Director Alvarez is not here and won't be here for a bit. So we're going to go ahead and take the information calendar first. So, and then we're going to modify that a bit. And we're going to take the
Capital Improvement Program.
Capital Improvement Program, and we're going to make that, well, leave it what it is, but we're going to change the order and we're going to take that now. And then after that, then we'll come back to the A, which would be the recycled water master plan update. That will come after the CIP improvement program update. Is that right?
If we're going to start with 6B, then go to 6C,
No.
then back.
Say.
No, we're modifying it a bit.
We're going to start with 6B, and then 6C, and then go back to 6A.
Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, are we good to proceed in that fashion? Any disagreements?
What page does 6B start on?
We're going to, good afternoon, Director Williams and members of the committee. Could everyone please turn to page 82 in their packet? I'm here this afternoon.
Hold on one second. Are you?
Okay, let's hold for one moment.
I apologize.
No need to apologize. I'm just happy to see you.
Thank you.
So are we?
Very few people are.
We're going to, well, it's up to Are you ready to start, sir? You need
If,
to.
I need a minute.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead. I think you were having the meeting. I'm okay.
Okay.
Continue for.
Okay, so we'll continue with item 6B, and we have Wendell Johnson, Manager of Engineering, ready to give a presentation. So Wendell, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, General Manager. This afternoon, I'm here to give a brief update on the CIP program. And I'd like for everyone to turn to page 82 in their agenda package. And this is where the presentation first begins. I'm going to point out some specific changes in the update. And then I have with me available all the project managers of the individual projects in case there's a specific question about any of the information that's being provided in this presentation. So if we could turn to page 84 in the agenda packet. Okay, this slide is something new. In the past, the members of the committee and members of the board has expressed that they would like information on solicitations that the department is going out with. Right now, the department is in the middle of two major solicitations for the on-call services contract for engineering services and on-call construction management services. The solicitation started this earlier this month, in the month of March, and we're expected to have a tentative board date for this solicitation or to enter into these agreements in June. It's a $3 million on-call services contract for both the engineering on-call services as well as the construction management services. The term of the agreement is approximately 3 years. Okay, next slide, please.
And before you continue, Wendell, I'd like to just acknowledge that we have Chair Alvarez with us now, present in the meeting. Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Thank you.
Okay,
Which, excuse me, which means that we'll have to pivot again when you're done with your report, so I can give it task to my chief here, and then he'll take over and reset the agenda.
Okay, very good.
Okay. And on the next slide, page 85 in your agenda packet, we also are happy to announce that we are out to bid for the decommissioning of the Brewer desalter. I know that this has been a closely watched project by the board members in order to facilitate the sale of the well for WRD, and so that the district interest will be no longer in operating the desalter. So let you know that the proposals are expected in later this month, and we expect to have it to award a contract at the tentative May board meeting. Okay, and next slides, please. Okay, and before I have before me the complete CIP package. If there's any specific questions on any of the projects that are within the CIP program, I have my project managers on standby here on this conference that would be able to ask any questions that the board has. In a general sense, we've been having some difficulties. The latest shortage that we are dealing with is actually a cement shortage. And the JN Phase 2 Carson expansion, for instance, we had a rain date earlier this month. And because of that rain date, we weren't able to get concrete for an additional 7 to 10 days after. So when we went to reschedule it, it wasn't like you were going to be able to get concrete that afternoon nor the next day, but it fell 7 to 10 days from the initial pour. So we do have some issues with keeping the project on schedule because of the material shortage and supply chain chain shortage worldwide, but we are working diligently with our construction management team in order to keep the project on track. But I thought that that little piece of information may be useful for the board to know that those are the kind of issues that we are addressing on a day-to-day issues in the field on some of the construction projects. So if there's any questions about any of the projects, welcome to answer them for you.
Quick question concerning the Kenneth Hahn recycled water lateral project. You say it's on hold,
Yes,
and reason being?
the board had decided earlier this year that we weren't going to be proceeding with the project.
Okay. But some people who had an interest in the project were notified that this is on hold, I'm assuming.
My recollections, we spoke about this project last year, actually, the earlier part of last year. I think it was in the spring, about this time last year. And after quite a bit of discussion, putting it on hold would be one way. I just saw that and I said, okay, that's one way to consider it. But really, that we had set the project aside and we would do other things and possibly return to this project, but there was not anybody taking the water at that time. There was no firm commitment for delivery of the water to where it was extended. The parcel of land for the pump station that was being considered was not available, was privately owned. And I forget, there were a couple of other reasons for not proceeding with it. And the funding for it was really not in place.
Well, just from a public relations standpoint, we want to make sure that people aren't out there looking for this project to come up. And we say, oh, by the way, it was put on hold back a year ago. So I just want to make sure we're not caught into that thing. Yes.
If I may, Director Williams, what Director Alvarez says is correct. We went out for an RFP for design services, came in to award the design services for the project. It was over $1 million. So there was a little bit of concern about the cost without necessarily securing funding for a project of this magnitude. And there was some thought about maybe we can proceed with a little bit of the environmental work, but I think the board at that time thought that it'd be better to proceed with a project like this if there is multiple stakeholders coming in and investing in the project before we proceed and spend money on a project like this. And so what we did is we had some money included for environmental, but given the reluctance of the board for some of these recycled water projects, what we did instead is we included all the recycled water pipeline, purple pipe type of projects, major projects for purple pipe, in the new agreement that we're wishing to seek from the Army Corps of Engineers. And if that follows through, if the Army Corps chips in 75% of the cost, then potentially these projects could potentially be feasible, and we would bring that back to the board to decide if we want to spend more money on moving ahead with these projects. Based on all that information that happened with Kenneth Hahn, we don't plan to include this project in the next fiscal year budget at all.
Well, I understand that, and I'm not opposed to what you're doing. All I want to know is that those people who were looking forward to having the project know that it's on hold.
This is Board Member Houston, and I think I can answer the question, Mr. Chair, if it's okay. Yes, to my knowledge, Director Williams, all parties involved have been notified and have, we've discussed with them, let them know up front what had transpired. And as a matter of fact, I think about a month ago, give or take, interim general manager at the time, E.J. Caldwell, was also in touch with the Baldwin Hills Conservancy because they had asked to follow up, and I asked him to reach out and provide a status. So for all intents and purposes, I'm in the same place where this project is on hold. We did not have the partners. We did not have, really a plan together yet. So I see no reason to do anything further with this project at this time, as well as we're rescoping our whole future outlook on Purple Pipe projects. So, but for sure, by the way, Director Williams, they usually do reach out directly to me, and or in this case, it was EJ. We'll make sure they have Greg's information, but we've been really good to try and stay in touch with the folks who are interested in this project.
Thank you. Question asked and answered. Thank you. Go ahead.
Conclude the presentation. If there's no other questions about the project.
If there's no other questions about any project in the presentation, then I conclude the presentation.
I don't have any question more. Anyone else out there? Okay, then go on to the next item.
Okay, so were we redirecting the agenda back to our committee chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, and I apologize, ran a little late. Shouldn't happen, but it does. First, I'm not quite sure where we are in the agenda, so probably we'll proceed along the lines of wherever things are. But I did want to, at the very beginning, extend a warm welcome to our new general manager, Mr. Greg Reed. It's great to have you at the district, and as chair of this committee, I'd like to welcome you, and I'm sure that Director Williams already welcomed you. So glad you're on board and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, Director Alvarez, Chair Alvarez. Appreciate that warm welcome.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we go all the way back up to,
Okay.
because I think we started where we did because we didn't want you to miss some very important things. So if I were you, I would go all the way back to the beginning so that we would get.
So we're going to go back to the determination of quorum? I don't think.
No, we're not going to go there. We're going to go to the action calendar.
All right, let's go to the action calendar. The first item up is the award of the construction contract for the Torrance Refinery Water Recycling Plant Retaining Wall and Backflow Preventers project. So, Mr. General Manager, would you like to introduce the staff that's going to be making this presentation?
Absolutely. I would like to introduce Mr. Joel Blair, our engineering supervisor, who will be able to provide a briefing on this particular action item. So, Joel, please take her away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, directors. As mentioned, this action item before you on page 5 of the agenda packet is for recommended award of a construction contract for retaining wall installation and backflow prevention device replacement at the Torrance Refinery water recycling plant. This is a project that was included in the fiscal year 21-22 budget. I do want to highlight that we are planning to recover project costs from Torrance Refinery due to the drivers on this project, which are safety risks, compliance risks, and service risks. We are recommending that we execute this project now and work in parallel to recover the costs. Our recent updates to you on this project, they mentioned that the design is complete and that we are currently in the bidding phase. Here we are today ready to recommend a contractor for the work. But before that, I would like to walk you through the scope of the project and its drivers and explain some of the physical constraints at the site. If you could please turn to page 9 of the agenda packet. So on page 9 of the packet, we have our Torrance Refinery satellite plant. It's outlined here in orange. It's located in the northeast portion of the Torrance Refinery on the corner of West 190th Street and Crenshaw Boulevard. You can see the arrows pointing to where the actual project location will be. It's a tight little area between this large nitrification product tank and the boundary of our plant. So we do have some constraints here. Next slide, please. Here is a zoomed in view of this project area. Again, it's a tight squeeze there between this tank. We'll zoom in on the next slide, but for here, you can see that it's hard to get to this area, and a lot of the equipment and the materials that we'll be bringing in for this project will need to be craned over this tank. We'll be between the tank and this Crenshaw drainage channel. And in between those two structures, we do have our own process piping and the refinery's process piping. So if we could please go to the next slide. So on this slide, this is a even more zoomed in area. We're showing here the scope of the project. We have this orange retaining wall that runs from left to right. That is actually not the property line, but the boundary between refinery property and refinery property on which our satellite plant sits on. And we have this dark blue pipe on the left that shows new piping and the new backflow preventer assembly. Those are the two main components of this project. The drivers for these two items. So the retaining wall in orange, the intent of that is to protect our pipes there. They're shown in the light green and the light blue. We are trying to protect those from being undermined. We are seeing some evidence of pavement cracking and indications that the subgrade below these pipe supports might be eroding. And therefore, we would like to protect the pipe supports before they have a chance to either fail and break our pipe, or even worse, fall towards the Crenshaw channel and damage the refinery piping and lose our influent lines. And on the left here, we have the backflow preventer assembly. This is an assembly that is tested annually. And in the last test in May of 2021, it did not pass testing, and we had to rebuild it and to allow it to pass annual testing. Even though it passed annual testing and was rebuilt, the vendor did recommend that we do a full replacement of the backflow preventer to ensure that it does protect our influent potable line. And sorry, to summarize, that backflow preventer does protect that blue potable line. And the green piping here is our influent recycled water, our Title 22 water to the plant. So this is a very critical area where the only supplies of water to our facility and therefore the boiler feed for the refinery. This is the only place it enters, and we are looking to protect it. Please go to the next slide. Here's a picture of this tight squeeze between the tank and the fence. So that fence is our boundary between our property, our plant, and the refinery piping and the channel. And you can see the pipe supports there supporting the green pipe. That is our influent Title 22 line. And we do have that white pipe on top that will be demolished, and the one on the ground, which is our influent potable water line. Please go to the next slide. Here's just a quick picture of our backflow preventers. These are 8-inch backflow preventers. We are looking to upsize them to 12-inch to match the piping that is there. As you can see there on the left, there is a reducer showing that the backflow preventer is smaller than the remaining pipeline. Please proceed to the next slide. And I'm sorry, I have been mentioning the page notes. So we are on page
page 14. Packet page 14.
Thank you for that. So we are on package page 14. This is a picture showing the cracking of the pavement on the ground. You can see the pipe supports, the pavement near the pipe supports. There is damage there, and we do want to protect the pipe supports from being undermined. You can see on the right side a schematic of the retaining wall that we will be building. It will be a bit of a surgical process between this, the refinery piping on that rack there on the left and our slope on the right. It'll take some hand digging by the contractor, so some fine work there. And on the next slide, please, page 15.
Question.
Right.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Director Williams.
Now, the pavement that you show here on page 14, now the way the pavement is cracking or cracked up, I'm assuming that's asphalt and not concrete.
That's correct. That's asphalt. And
Okay.
and the grade on the lower side, on the other side of the fence, is lower than the grade on our side of the fence. And it is not covered. It is exposed dirt. So that is where we are suspecting that the erosion is happening, and we are getting some movement of the subgrade into the channel beneath the spike support.
Thank you.
Joel, along the lines of that picture, on the right-hand side of the crack, looks like there's a concrete grade. What is that?
On the right side of the cracking, we have the footing or the foundation slab for the tank itself. So
So the tank is on that side. All right. Okay.
tank is on the
So
right side in this photo.
So the cracking is happening on the right side towards the tank.
Yes, that's where we're seeing.
The unsupported side is on the other side.
That is correct. Yes, on the left side of the chain link fence there. To the left
You
of our.
didn't Is there any cracking on that side?
So that side is unlined. So it's actually dirt on that side. So there is no pavement that is cracking on that side. It's just exposed soil. You could please go to page 15. We'll go over the summary of the scope of work. So as part of this work, we will be required to do a temporary bypass system to keep this potable line available. We will remove and dispose of the existing pipe, that white pipe I was mentioning earlier. The contractor will furnish and install the replacement pipe, valves, the backflow preventer fittings, and some new pipe supports. We will, as I mentioned, there's that dirt exposed on the other side of the fence. We will be looking to add some lining there so that we do connect the existing pavement to the actual lined channel, covering that small gap in between the two structures to make sure there is no longer any exposed soil. And we will be removing and replacing the fence and the pavement, also that current pavement that we've been talking about. Please go to the next page. 16. This is the anticipated schedule. We advertised for bids on February 22nd. Bids were due March 22nd. We are looking to award the contract on the 25th and April 25th, and have a notice to proceed about a month later with completion in December. If you wouldn't mind going back to the memo on page 6 of the packet, I'd like to go over the solicitation results. So we did receive 5 bids on this project. The engineer's estimate was $470,000. The lowest responsive bid was from Vicon Enterprise of Anaheim, California. Their bid was $445,500. So at this time, I would like to read the recommendation on page 7 of the packet, please. So the recommendation is that the board authorizes the general manager to enter into an agreement with Vicon Enterprise for construction services on the Torrance Refinery water recycling plant retaining wall and backflow preventer project in the amount of $445,500 plus a 10% contingency for a total not to exceed contract amount of $490,050. If you have any further questions, I will be glad to respond.
Okay, Director Williams, do you have other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick one here. Have we used these folks before? Have they worked for us at all?
Vicon Enterprise, under a different name, did install that green pipeline that was in the photos. So they have worked for West Basin, they have worked at this plant, and they have worked in this tight area between the tank and the fence.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Any other board members have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, hearing none, I got a couple of interesting questions. This isn't a very long section of retaining wall, is it?
Correct. It is about 80 to 100 feet.
That long?
Yes.
If you look at your scale on package page 11, might be more like 60. So seems like a pretty expensive per unit cost for what we're building. I get it. It also includes the backflow preventer valve. Property that we're doing the improvements on is property. Sorry?
An interference there.
I muted them.
Okay. The property that we're doing the improvement on is not property that we own. This is property that's owned by Chevron. I'm sorry, Torrance Refinery.
That's correct.
So is the Torrance, why are we not having the Torrance Refinery pay for these improvements?
We are planning on having Torrance Refinery pay for these improvements. At this time, we are concerned about the safety, compliance, and the risk to our product water here. So what we recommend is to conduct the work and in parallel recover the cost from Torrance Refinery. So have them pay for it, but at this time we do not yet have an agreement with them to recover the cost. But that is something we would pursue at the same time as executing the project.
Okay, has the Torrance Refinery been contacted? Has the Torrance Refinery indicated their willingness to pay for this? Because once we build it and we pay for it, getting the Torrance Refinery to reimburse us is probably going to be potentially a difficult task unless they've already agreed that they're going to do that. So have they been contacted? Have they indicated that they're going to reimburse us?
I can expand on that, Director Alvarez, if I may. So when we have two agreements with Torrance Refining Company, one for the nitrified, one for the boiler feed. When we were negotiating with them for the nitrified extension, we presented to them a slew of projects on site inside the plant that refurbishment projects, R&R projects, similar to this one. But because this is mainly impacts boiler feed, this was not in that package. At that time, they did not agree to any of those R&R projects. They only agreed of the ones that are upstream outside of the plant, citing ownership issues that we needed to resolve and some of the other factors. Now, both agreements are up in 2023, next year. And so as part of those negotiations, we will include this project and other projects on the plate for them to recoup the costs. Yes, it's true that after the fact, they could decide not to pursue, and then we're going to have to decide what to do later because we can't subsidize a refinery for anything legally. So we will have to kind of see what the options are. The reason why we feel like we need to proceed with this one at this time is because the backflow preventer is a backup potable water supply is critical for refinery operations, is critical for us to supply the refinery with a certain amount of water quality. Unfortunately, the agreement we have for the boiler feed really puts the onus on us to supply them with the proper water quality and the proper amount of water quantity. And if we don't meet those, the refinery has a right for us to pay the difference for whatever water that they would have to put together as an alternative source. Now, they had an alternative source 5-7 years ago, but with the explosion that happened at the refinery in 2015-16, that alternative source is no longer there. Potable water line this backflow is on is the single line going to them. So it's critical for us to, based on the agreement that we have with them, the backup potable is very critical. We sometimes go up to 1.5 million gallons per day as supplement potable because we're losing capacity in the plant. Now that's for the potable. For the influent line, for the retaining wall that supports the influent line, that influent line is for both. For nitrified, it's basically the water coming into the plant for everything that we produce from the plant. So again, it's very critical for us from a supply standpoint, from the language that's in the agreement that we have with them, to provide them the service. Otherwise, there might be cost to the districts that are way beyond the cost of the construction of these facilities. That's the basis for us to making the decision and saying, we better go ahead and do this. There's a compliance factor here. There's a risk factor here there's a liability factor here on the district, and there's a cost factor here for the district. And we said, we think we have a good chance for recouping these costs, a really good chance for recouping this cost. Let's go ahead and proceed with this project. This project had a bigger scope, but to reduce the cost of it, we're just proceeding with the ones that we thought that are most critical at this time. Going back to your question, has the refinery been updated on this project? This project initially started with an emergency that we had at the refinery. There was a shear, a pipeline that shear and break. Dr. Alvarez went with the district back then, but we were, so they're aware of some of the issues that are out there, but we haven't presented this project to them until very recently.
Okay. So they're basically not aware of the project right now and have not been contacted about participating in the cost or paying for the cost if the improvements are really to their property. And we're going to come back to them in 2023. You told me is when the agreement's up for renegotiation. And they're going to be renegotiating it, I'm sure, from their side and their interest. And they're not going to want to have to go back and revisit some things that the district chose to do on its own without previously contacting them and putting them on notice. By the way, this is what we think you need to participate in. Are you going to be willing to participate? And it will be an item for discussion in our contract. So negotiating their contract for them, I would say, you did that. You didn't inform us. We were not advised. We're not going to participate. We don't want to participate in any amount. And so we're going to be out $450,000. Now you're telling me that this is an emergency because of the backflow preventer device and the fact that we need to get water in there. The backflow preventer that's there right now actually has been working for a long time and pretty much addresses the flows that's there. It's a discretionary item to replace the backflow preventer. And it could be done. It might not be a bad idea to upsize the backflow preventer, but backflow preventers generally last pretty indefinite. They do need a little bit of maintenance and testing annually. And I'm sure that our permitting team is right on top of making sure that this is being tested in accordance with the regular testing schedule.
Correct.
So the urgency that you imply, I don't follow. And I would be much more comfortable if we really contacted the Torrance refinery first and worked out an agreement with the Torrance Refinery for reimbursement of this. And or having the Torrance Refinery pay for it and advance the funds now, as opposed to incurring the money or improvements on property that we don't own that aren't critical. This is not an imminent danger of failure, even though that was the implication. And so it would be much more prudent and a better investment of public funds if we first contacted the owner of the property and said, hey, by the way, these improvements need to be made. For that reason, I'm not going to support this particular item.
And provide additional information. Just for the record, we have contacted them to present this item. They have not responded to it. On operational level, but not just this project, we have contacted them to say, we want to sit down to present a bunch of projects for you. The response hasn't been great for the past, I would say 7-8 months. In addition, with regards, at the operational level, it has been mentioned to them, from operations staff to operations staff. But for the folks that need to be, folks that would be involved in the negotiation of something that would be reimbursed, it hasn't been presented to them because we weren't lucky enough to kind of get their attention on this thing. Now, with regards to the compliance, you're absolutely right. When we did the testing and it failed, we had to make some repairs urgently. Usually they give us about 30 days to do a repair. We did the repair and the report came back. They basically said it's on its last legs and it barely passed. And they recommended us to do a replacement. With regards to the urgency, if I may, from the agreement that we have with the Torrance Refinery, recycled water may not contain impurities in excess of specific maximum values. This is the expectation the refinery has from West Basin. If West Basin cannot deliver recycled water of suitable quality, then West Basin will pay the refinery costs for temporary water treatment devices and costs for additional demineralizer operations, maintenance, and other related costs during such periods. Also, with regards to quantity, failure by West Basin to consistently and reliably supply the amount of water needed by the refinery gives Mobile the right to reduce payments by the amount equivalent to the refinery's increased costs for acquiring treated water from alternative sources. So those alternative sources, we believe, don't exist anymore if you don't have the potable. Lastly, repeated and significant deficiencies in reliable supply gives the refinery the right to terminate the agreement without further financial obligation to West Basin. So just segments of the agreement that we have with them that really made us think that we should do this sooner than later.
Okay, I did not hear anything there that tells me this is an imminent danger of failure, that they're going to incur the loss of ability to serve water to that facility. And the issue with the backflow preventer, it probably can go another year, probably can go several other years. And when they do come in and do the backflow prevention test, they do make adjustments to it. So I think that there is time to contact the Torrance Refinery and address this issue. And if you believe that the language that you just read to me is so critical, I would bring that up to the Torrance Refinery and say, by the way, your failure to act on this may cause us to not be able to deliver water, and then that burden is on you. So I would feel much more comfortable, given how the Torrance Refinery tends to react and negotiate, if this was taken care of first in terms of are they going to pay for it or not, then after the fact.
Okay, you can make.
Quick question. So how long is this bid good for?
Joel,
Typically 60 days, but I would have to look at the spec, and I can do that while we.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
60 days, I
60
believe.
days.
That's typically 60 days.
And we could ask them to hold their pricing, right? That can be a request of ours.
You could. I've had last year a contractor hold their pricing for 6 months. So it will.
It's all
It's
negotiable.
doable. In this particular case, I don't see that it's much more than concrete, and other cost of concrete has gone up. But it's not anything that's really impacted in terms of supply chain where the price is going to more than double. So you probably can, if you really feel that this bid is all that great, request that they extend their bid for 6 months. And I think that within 60 days, you should be able to get a hold of the Torrance Refinery and put them on notice that their failure to act is going to adversely impact West Basin's ability to deliver water, and therefore it's on their nickel.
With that, Mr. Chair, I would, before I could vote on this, I'd like to hear from the general manager on this. So to give him time to look at this and address some of the issues that you brought up before we move this forward to the board.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, we'll do that. Staff will take this one back and discuss internally and look at our options to reach out to mobile. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, and then in addition to that, another question rather. On the property of the refineries, do we have to have permission from them before we do work on the site?
Yes.
Parkett?
Yes, and we did meet with them last Thursday to talk about logistics for upcoming projects. This project was mentioned to the process engineer, not somebody who can negotiate or is in a position to pay for the projects, but we did talk about this project, and there were no concerns about us working on their property for this particular project.
We should always have that in writing, just in case.
Okay, we can include that in our work as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so then moving on to the next item on the action calendar, it's another construction contract awarding. And this is a contract for the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility Sodium Hypochlorite Day Tank Replacement Project. So Mr. General Manager, would you like to introduce that item?
I'm happy to do so, Chair Alvarez. Again, we have Joel Blair, our engineering supervisor, to provide a report out on this particular action item. So Joel, please take her away.
Thanks. So this action item, starting on page 18 of the agenda packet, is for recommended award of a construction contract for a chemical tank installation at the Ed C. Little Recycling Facility, Water Recycling Facility. You may recall that we presented this project at the September 27, 2021 board meeting. At that time, we had been made aware that a sodium hypochlorite day tank had started leaking if it was filled beyond 60% of its capacity. At this board meeting, we summarized the options to address the issue. We discussed relining the tank, replacing the tank, relining and then replacing the tank for complete tank elimination. The board agreed with staff's recommendation that tank replacement would be the best option, and we were approved to proceed with this tank replacement at a budget of up to $120,000. So since September 2021, we procured a tank fabricator. We completed tank anchoring design, and we conducted a formal solicitation for a tank installer. The results of the selection process for the tank installer are summarized on page 19. The agenda packet. So as you can see, we had 4 bids total. Tarsos Inc. was found to be the lowest responsive bidder. And before I read the recommendation for this project, I would like to discuss the costs to date on the project. That is on page 20 of the packet. So in September 2021, we had developed a stepwise approach to execute this project. At the time, our steps were: 1, authorize a tank vendor to begin fabrication; 2, get with a design engineer for minor design, mainly for the anchors for the tanks; and then 3 would be to procure the installation contractor. For step 1, we had estimated $42,000 to $48,000 for the new tank. We do have an award to LFM Inc. of Giddings, Texas. Their proposal was $41,252. We did have Tetra Tech do the tank anchoring work, and for that we had estimated $8,000 to $16,000, and that work is now complete. It cost us $9,500. And so here we are today. We are ready to recommend award of the installation contractor. That was estimated at $30,000 to $56,000. And the current number is $39,675 plus a 20% contingency. Assuming we do proceed with the recommendation today, the total price for this project estimated at this time would be $98,362 out of that $120,000 limit. So at this time, I would like to read the recommendation. So on the next page of the board packet, the recommendation reads that the board authorizes the general manager to enter into an agreement with Tharsos Inc. for construction services at the Ed C. Little Water Recycling Facility sodium hypochlorite day tank replacement project in the amount of $39,675 plus a 20% contingency for a total not to exceed contract amount of $47,610. I will take your questions if you have.
Director Williams.
I want to hear your comments.
Well, as the chair, I'd like to give everybody an opportunity to talk, but
Here you, well, now I'm.
I'll ask for the other directors if they have any comments, and then I will give you my comment. So any other directors have any comments?
No, thank
Okay.
you.
Hearing none. Comments / questions. First, at the back in September, you did bring this to the E&O committee on September 15th and then on September 27th to the board. And at that time, you did provide 4 alternatives. And the recommendation of the staff was the full tank replacement. And we were advised that this was along the lines of an emergency type of situation where the tank needed immediate replacement. At the time, you also said, you gave us a range of costs which are consistent with the costs that you presented in Table B, and the upper range was about $120,000. And we went ahead and authorized it to proceed with the project, not to exceed $120,000. So congratulations. In total, you brought the project in for about $100,000. So that's all very good. Congratulations to you. One of the things, Joel, that you said, and you can go to the videotape of the meeting, and you had said at the time that and that this was an emergency project, and showing us pictures and so on, and that if we approved it, that it would be part of the reason for approving it the way we approved it, etc., and that it was an emergency and it needed to be replaced, that it would be completed within 120 days. And I'm sorry, not 120 days, 180 days, within 6 months completion. So we're here now. 6 months have passed by. We're in the 7th month, and you're about to award the contract, so it's not completed yet. So one of the things that I see over and over again is just this continual delay, and delay may be a harsh word, but inability to get things done in a timely fashion. And I think by now that you've all recognized that I'm really concerned about spending money. I like to spend money very wisely, and I like to get things done. I like to get things done in a very timely fashion. So if I say I'm going to do something in 180 days, then I'm going to do it in that time period. And part of the sales and the need for this project was the urgency, and that tank needed to be replaced. It was like, we can't do it fast enough. Obviously, you can't just snap your fingers to get something done. But here we are, 7 months later, the project's still not completed, and it'll probably get completed in about another 2 months, because we'll approve it, the board will approve it at the end of the month. Then you are going to notify the contractor, you're going to issue your notice to proceed, you're going to collect the bonds, and so on, and then the project will move forward and probably take a couple of weeks to actually install the tank, since it's I'm assuming it's fabricated, that is complete.
I may respond to that.
Even though it does says in fabrication, but it'll probably be completed by the time the contractor is on board. My point is, and I do want to drive this point home, if we say we're going to do something, please do it. And when you tell me there is an urgency, and I have my doubts about the urgency of a lot of these projects, then prove that there is an urgency. I'm just a doubting Thomas, I guess. Those are my comments.
Well taken, Chair Alvarez. We understand the need to demonstrate the urgency where we're indicating that such exists. And so we need to follow through with our actions to match that urgency. So we'll take that to heart in our all of our project endeavors.
Okay. Any other board comments?
So where does that leave us now?
I think that we just ought to go ahead and complete it, and I would move that we move it to the board for award of the contract. We've already, it needs to be finished.
Okay, well, I will support that.
Okay, so.
May I respond to the delay? Is that okay?
You may.
I would say, in the interest of time, Joel, if we could move to the next agenda item, if it pleases the chair.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And thank you. Pleases the chair very much.
And that's
Next
not
item is the award agreement for construction management services for the Palos Verdes recycled water pipeline project. So, Mr. General Manager.
Okay, thank you, Chair Alvarez. We have Veronica Govea, who's prepared to, our engineering supervisor, Veronica Govea, who's prepared to give a presentation on this action item. So please, Veronica, begin with your presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Greg. This board item is on your package, item 5C, page 22 of your packet. And this is basically a continuation from our previous presentation at the board meeting in February, where we presented an information item to notify the board of the upcoming events for this particular project, and as well as a quick summary of the latest on the design and construction for the Palos Verdes recycled water pipeline project. The construction management request for proposal was issued on December 22nd of 2021, and basically includes the services for both the pipeline and the pump station. The scope of work is not only for project coordination, construction management, but also for documentation control, change order negotiations, material testing, scheduling, and so forth. And a copy of the scope of work was also included at the February board meeting. The proposals that were received for this particular project were originally due on January 18. And however, we did receive a request to extend that time. We did evaluate the request, and we extended the time for proposals to be submitted to the district on February 1st. 813 companies submitted a board item through the Marcel system. 5 of them attended the pre-proposal meeting, and 2 proposals were received. Proposals were evaluated thoroughly by a panel that was conformed by West Basin staff and also an exterior member from Cowater. And both companies were also interviewed. Quick synopsis of the results are basically represented on table A. However, your attachment on exhibit A shows a little bit more of the breakdown of all the areas that were evaluated, as well as the point breakdown for those particular areas. In these results, basically what the team found out was that the team formed by Carollo engineers presented a good proposal. They had a good approach. They had a very strong team, and the team basically the results resulted in the recommendation for Carollo engineers as the construction management for the project. I want to mention that the original cost proposal that was submitted by Carollo engineers was $1,198,124. However, part of the review process is also looking at the labor hours, who's working on it, analyzing how much manpower is being utilized, the areas that could be overlapping. And then those things are always, discussed with or construction, well, whoever is a consultant. And if it's deemed that, yeah, there was some hours or something that could have been, changed, is then negotiated. So the revised proposal for cost was $962,624.40. With this, I will read the recommendation and I will open the forum for questions. The recommendation reads that the board authorizes the general manager to enter into an agreement with Carollo engineers for construction management services for the Palos Verdes recycled water pipeline project in the amount of $962,624.40 plus an additional 10% contingency for a total not to exceed amount of $1,058,886.40. With this, I'll be happy to answer any question.
Director Williams, do you have any questions?
Yes, yes, thank you. West Basin always puts out a good project. And I'm just wondering, since we sent out to the world when we do an outreach, why we only got 2 responses. And I know Carollo has done work for us before, and so has AKM. It's just, what did you check out the folks and why, and ask them why they didn't propose on this? It sounds like a great project. It's in a great area. It's exciting kind of work. Why wouldn't we get more bidders?
Yes, I did reach out to a few companies, not to all of them. It's an extensive amount of companies. However, I reached to some of them, and basically some of the responses was, one, inability to have enough personnel for this type of project. There is a pipeline and a pump station, which duration is a little bit extensive. And also some of them didn't have the personnel. Some of them were already busy. So basically that was most of the common factor that they gave us response.
Too busy.
Busy or not enough people, not enough personnel to work on a project like this.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
If I may, in addition to that, and that was the response for this particular project. In speaking to our consultants, generally speaking, when they see an agency that is going out for bid and then changing their mind, not proceeding with a project like we did for the Kenneth Hahn, that sometimes consultants look at that, they spend money on proposals and doing interviews and stuff like that, and then we change course. That certainly doesn't help the agency in looking forward. When we approve a project to proceed, we give an update to the board, and we say we're going through these projects, and then when it's time to award, we make a different decision. So doing that over and over again frequently, I think also does not help. So we just have to kind of keep that in mind moving forward.
I don't understand that.
I don't understand that either, but
Well, Kenneth Hahn, like we said earlier
This
today.
is not Kenneth Hahn. This is,
No, it isn't. I'm just saying, generally speaking, I'm not responding to this particular project, but generally speaking and talking to some of the consultants that are out there, that certainly doesn't help.
well,
I don't know what to say now.
I disagree with our executive manager of engineering and operations comments and observations on this, but I'm only a consulting engineer.
You can't listen to him.
So
There's too many engineers in this mix.
there are. But that's okay. Anyways, any other comments?
No, I'll hear from our general manager.
Mr. General Manager, do you have any comments?
I do not have any comments at this
Okay.
time.
I don't have any other comments. Do the other board members have comments?
Well, this is board member Houston. Number one, I don't even want to get into that discussion that was just being had. I don't think that's appropriate. Number two, I think that I'm fully supportive of this recommendation, and I'm not on the committee, but I'm fully supportive, gentlemen.
And I would say that I also support the recommendation to go forward on the basis that we do have funding partners on this project. I believe we have low interest loans as well. And so I think this is probably a good one to go forward with.
I would agree with that. And I would move that this move forward. Is that fine with you?
I concur. Just, again, I think we should always, why we have such a great project and just two people proposing on the construction management. I mean, that's not design.
And in response to that, perhaps it deserves a second look and a lesson learned for us to consider.
But for now on this one, let's go ahead. We do need to move this project forward. We've made a commitment. So
And it's been out there for a long time.
even though it's not out to bid yet, it will be out to bid shortly.
We're talking about the consulting,
No,
No.
the
What,
construction part,
the actual pipeline itself. Okay.
yes. So we're bringing in the CM prior to finalizing the construction.
There we go. Got it.
All right, so we're done with that item. Next item up is the amendment for supply and delivery of mini bulk chemical. So, Mr. General Manager, I believe you did send out some revised documents for our consideration that you received from the suppliers.
That's exactly right, Chair Alvarez. So you're calling upon item 5D. We also have 5E, which is in a similar situation. But given that we're on the first item, Susanna,
If you would like, we can take them together. They're very similar.
they are very similar. And if you don't mind us taking the two together, that would be great. So with that, you are aware of the adjustment to our recommendations because of the concerns that were raised by one of our suppliers. And so with that, I will hand it off to Susanna Lee, our Senior Operations Engineer, to give a presentation on these two items, 5D and 5E. Susanna, please.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. Well, thank you, Greg, for the introductions, and good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the board and public. So please turn to page 26 of your package to find copy of the agenda item 5D. And as Greg and Chairman Alvarez mentioned, that there is an amendment to both items 5D and E. So I will incorporate those discussions into my presentations. With that, I just want to apologize in advance if at any point of my presentation becoming confusing. Just let me know. I will be glad to stop and repeat and clarify any of the information. So with that, I'll begin by providing a brief overview why we need the mini bulk chemical. The mini bulk system was installed CL to provide essential chemicals to the two mobile microfiltration systems, and these mobile MF systems were commissioned in 2017, originally installed to respond to the decline performance of phase 2 and phase 3 MF systems. And with the installations of this system, it prevents and eliminates the need for borrowing microfiltration capacity from barrier. Because of these mini bulk systems, the quantities tend to be smaller. So in comparison, even though they're the same chemicals, but in comparison, because of economy of scales, unit pricings for these chemicals tend to be higher. So the supply and delivery for the mini bulk system contracts at this point are set to expire by June 30th of this year. And our staff have been keeping the board abreast throughout this fiscal year in regards to the different chemical industry constraints. Chemical vendors are continuing to receive raw material price increases, and they're subjecting to raw material shortages due to supply chain issues and chemical plants being shut down. These are also compounded by unprecedented fuel prices, resulting in high freight costs. So chemical vendors are hesitant to provide quotes to take on new customers and even to provide price quotes for more than 3 months in advance. So if in case they do, price speculation results in large cost quotes as vendors try to anticipate what the market would be beyond this 3-month period. With the aforementioned conditions and constraints in mind, staff is operating on a 6-month basis to try to access the best pricing and avoid large precedent setting pricing. So staff requested a renewal quote for the supply and delivery of mini bulk chemicals through December 15, 2022 from Miles Chemical, as they're the current vendors to provide the mini bulk chemicals at this point. Miles did respond and provide renewal pricing for the first 6 months of fiscal year 22 and 23. In addition, as in reference to the amendment for this item, Miles Chemical Company also submitted a request for unit price adjustment, claiming force majeures on the 3 mini bulk chemicals pricing included in the agreement W2970 for the current contract term. The claim is provided here in attachment A, and this is due to the unprecedented chemical industry-wide constraints that I just mentioned, and that is now creating an untenable conditions for Miles Chemical Company to continue its supply at its original quote. But space and operations and procurement staff checked producer price indexes and contacted other agency and vendors to validate these claim industry conditions and cost increases. And staff also have held discussions with the West Basin Legal Counsel to make sure that the appropriate procedures are taken in response to this request price increase. If the members of the board can refer to the revised table 1 on the April 12th memorandum, it lists the requested adjusted prices beginning April 1st to June 30th, which covers the remainder of the current agreement term. The increases ranges between 7 to 28% compared to the original prices. Table 2 of the same memo lists the renewal prices for the first 6 months for the fiscal year 22-23, which is set to begin July 1st to December 15, 2022. Comparing to the new adjusted price listed in Table 1, the renewal prices represent another additional 4 to 18% price increase. The extra cost for the 3 months increase will result in at most $20,000 for the current fiscal year chemical cost. This is in due to the berry production is not at full capacities, and we do not need to use the mobile system at its full capacity. The estimated amount for the 3 mini bulk chemicals for the use in the first 6 months of the fiscal year 22-23 is estimated to be $75,000, with approximately $150 to $300 fuel charge per month at the current fuel prices. Depending on the production, this would represent an average about 18% increase in price compared to last year mini bulk budget. The current intent though is for staff to go out to bid in September and to request for 1-year competitive pricing later on in this year. So with that, I will read the revised recommendations as stated in the addendum memo, that the board authorizes the general manager to amend agreement W2970 with Miles Chemical Company for supply and delivery of the following mini bulk chemicals at the following listed unit pricing. A, from April 1st to June 30th, 2022, sodium hypochlorite at $1.98 per gallon, sodium hydroxide at 33 cents per pound, and ferric chloride at 51 cents per pound. And B, from July 1st, 2022 through December 15, 2022, sodium hypochlorite at $2.33 per gallon, plus $100 fuel surcharge per delivery, sodium hydroxide at 37.5 cents per pound, plus $100 fuel surcharge per delivery, and finally, ferric chloride at 53 cents per pound, plus $100 fuel surcharge per delivery. This concludes my presentations, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Susanna, should we also review the 5E recommendations?
Yes. If you want me to go ahead and go through that.
And I would assume that your context applies, and we can go straight to the recommendation.
Certainly. I can, let me see. Okay. Yes. So I will read the recommendations for 5E as well. So the revised recommendation is listed on the addendum memo. So the revised recommendation reads that first, that the board authorizes the general manager to amend the agreements below with the following chemical suppliers from July 1st, 2022 through December 15, 2022 for the supply and delivery of the following chemicals at listed unit pricing. A, carbon dioxide, contract W2962, California Tools and Welding Supply, to supply and deliver carbon dioxide at $85.085 per pound, plus 0.0475 per pound of surcharge fee. B, ferric chloride, contract W2963, Penco Inc., to supply and deliver ferric chloride at $815 per dry ton. C, hydrated lime, W2964, Ahoy's North America, to supply and deliver hydrated lime at $320.74 per ton. D, sodium bisulfite, contract W2966, JCI Jones Chemical, supply and deliver sodium bisulfite at 0.4718 per dry pound for CNTP, TRWRP, and JMM-CRWRP. E, sodium hydroxide, contract W2967, JCI Jones Chemical to supply and deliver sodium hydroxide at $0.519 per dry pound. F, sodium hypochlorite, W2968, JCI Jones Chemical Inc. to supply and deliver sodium hypochlorite at $1.36 per gallon. And G, sulfuric acid, contract 2969, Unifor USA to supply and deliver sulfuric acid at $365 per ton for ECL, $450 per ton for Torrance, TRWRP, and $365 per ton for JMM CRWRP. In addition, that the board authorizes the general manager to amend the agreement with the Miles Chemical for the supply and delivery of hydrogen peroxide, contract W2965, beginning April 1st, 2022 through December 15, 2022 at $4.25 per gallon. That ends my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions, Director Williams?
No, thank you.
Any other directors have any comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, going to the second contract, the item 5E, there's a whole series of suppliers. So just let me pick one right now. The first one is for carbon dioxide, which is California Tools and Welding. Are they our current supplier for carbon dioxide?
What was the question? Have they what?
California Tools and Welding Supply, Chair Alvarez is interested to know whether they are a current supplier.
Correct. So we're extending all the current chemical contracts due to all the constraints that we've seen. Most of the chemical vendors are hesitant to take on new customer at this point.
Okay, so we are extending all of our contracts. So California Tools and Welding Supply, the current contract that expires on June 30th. Are we paying less than 0.085 per pound?
Yes, we
In the
are.
current contract?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So thank you for that. So it's very interesting. I think we need to move this item forward. But of all of the suppliers, only Miles Chemical is asking for an increase retroactive to April 1 for the 2 months that are left, or their 3 months that are left under contract. And
So-
the rest of the suppliers, am I misunderstanding that? Just, it seems that
At
that's
this
what they're
time,
asking.
yes, you're correct. Miles is only company or vendors that is asking for the price increase, partially because barrier has been shut down most of this fiscal year. So the mini bulk system have not been used. So it has not really impacted their bottom line until now that we are just started the system back to supplement the delivery of products to Chevron and Barrier. So that is one of the main reasons that they're only asking right now. And in supplementing what you ask, we have been asked by other chemical company throughout this fiscal year for supplementing or unit price adjustment. JCI, we came to the board to ask price adjustment for a couple of instances, and other company have asked in the past 18 months. So does that answer your question?
Yes, so Miles is asking retroactively for the next 3 months, starting April 1 through June 30th, to increase their current rate. And then from July 1 through the end of the year, Miles, as well as the rest of our suppliers, are increasing their prices, which I understand.
Correct.
It's quite prevalent right now on that. And as I said earlier, I think we're basically just need to move this item forward. I would like to really emphasize, and you mentioned it, that you will be going out for competitive bidding in the fall, to leave yourself plenty of time, because this is not going to go away. Prices will continue to go up, but it is best if we allow plenty of time in that competitive bidding process to try to keep the cost as low as possible. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
with that, we'll move this item forward to the full board. Okay, so where are we on the agenda? That concludes the action calendar. So we're back to the information calendar. I think that when I walked in, we were doing the capital improvement project.
Yes.
Okay. So there are two other items remaining on there, and it is 5:30. I want to come back to the recycled water master plan, but the monthly operations update may be something that we can take first. If we can do that in a relatively quick period of time, do you think that can be done in about 10 minutes? Or 10 or 15 minutes, Mr. General Manager?
Let me pose a question to my team. So Barkev, Susanna, is it possible to complete the monthly operations update within a 10-minute time frame?
I think we could speed through it.
Yes.
Susanna goes a yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, so with that said, we're happy to have Susanna continue into this next presentation alongside Uzi Daniels, our operations manager, as well as Frank Fuchs, our operations supervisor. So I'll hand it to Barkev to direct staff accordingly.
Yeah, the presentation will start with Susanna Lee. Susanna, floor is
And,
yours.
My
Are you
camera,
there,
but
Sus-
I'd be able to continue to present. So with that said, let's turn to the next slide. So this is a little bit different than our normal presentation. We'll begin with welcoming Veolia officially, as you all been made aware that Suez is now Veolia, and it was effective officially March 21st, 2022. And who is Veolia? As you can read, they are one of the largest operation companies here that has 8,500 water and wastewater facilities. And they also have wastewater and waste management and energy sector as well. And so welcome Veolia. Next page.
Just to notify the board, we're on packet page 132. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, Susanna.
Sorry, thank you. And I am having issues with my computer. So thank you, Barkev. So next, this is the turbidity, water quality slides that you've seen and familiarized with. As you can see that the influent water quality in terms of turbidity has improved slightly from February and even January. So the average turbidity in January was 28 NTU, coming into March, not March, yes, March, that it was averaged to around 24 NTU. So we're still seeing elevated and unstable water quality coming from the plant. And if you go to the next slide, which tells another side of the story, which is the solids that is coming in to the plant. As you can see, this graph shows that the average TSS before the Hyperion upset was averaging between 17 to 18 milligrams per liter. Since then, and especially since this March, we're averaging between 50 to 54 ppm of solids. What does that mean to operations? That means we're handling more than double the amount of solids in our system. And if you are aware that all of our systems is integrated, and this solid is recirculating within our plant at this point because of the amount of solid that retain, as well as the hauling capacity from our trucking company is been impacted. They have not been able to provide the number of trucks because of driver shortages. So it impacting our disinfected tertiary water quality, and that also impacts our satellite facility. So as an operational impact, we are supplementing our operations with potable water, as well as having to arrange with extra trucks to trying to help us recover from all these heavy solids upsets. Next slide, please. So the next two slides are just maintenance activity highlights. As I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot of solids, so which play a little heavy hit on our dewatering facility. And as I mentioned last board meeting, one of our press has been down because the heavy activities that we've seen. So these slides shows all the photos that all the repair work that was done during this past month. Press number 2 was offline since February 16th, and the repair was completed in March 25th. And I'm happy to report that all these repair work were done in-house by Veolia staff, as the manufacturer was originally recommending to have their consulting staff to do the work, but BLA was able to complete all the work with a total of 265 labor hours, and repair costs to be $15K, between 15 to 20K. And next slide, just to wrap up the maintenance highlights. We staff were also very busy to put in new membranes, so then to get us ready for barrier ramp up. And we also had to, some work to do with the SCE shutdown at our plant. So we completed all the work without any incidents. I'm going to pass it on to Uzi to complete the compliance section.
Great. Thank you, Susanna. Good afternoon, directors. If you'll refer to page 136 of your packet, you will see here our compliance table, which is here every month. A little larger. First quarter is a heavy month for a lot of compliance activities from all of the regulators. You're welcome to take a look. I know we're in the interest of time, we'll keep things moving. Please stop me or let me know if you have any questions on any of these. All were submitted on time without any notice of violations. I'll move to the next slide. Kind of a highlight, as we like to do. We used to do these quarterly, sort of a compliance or operations 101. Wanted to go over Npds permits. This is something that probably on the public tours and even colleagues in the industry will ask about. The Npds, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. For many of us who are familiar with drinking water systems, those are public drinking water system permits. Those are issued by the Department of Health. However, for recycled water, we serve our water under pollutant permits, discharge permits. Npds permits, there are quite a few. Many of you have heard of stormwater permit. There's even 3 types of stormwater permits. And when we get into recycled water, there are 2 types of Npds permits that we utilize, and that is the WRR and the WDR. The waste discharge requirement is the more traditional, what we think of, a waste discharge. Hyperion's outlet is a WDR. You hear us say the brine permits. We have 2 WDRs. That's the Carson brine and the Edward C. Little brine. We send those out there through the Hyperion brine line. The WRR, water recycling requirements, is to give a little credence to the fact that recycled water is a resource. So that change was made a number of years ago, still an NPDS permit, still considered a waste. That's what we need to overcome in order to have DPR, is for it not to be categorized as a waste. And then as WRRs, we have two of those permits. The Title 22 or the disinfected tertiary or purple pipe, and then the barrier. What you see in this schematic is where we try, or this flow chart is try to then add into, in addition to the WRR, the groundwater recharge regulations, which are periodically updated, and the recycled water policy, which is required per regs to be updated every 5 years, also adds another layer. So in addition to these permit requirements, we must also then keep track, keep up with these recycled water policies so that we can implement those. As you'll see over there, the regulators, the LA Regional Water Quality Control Board, the EPA has say in our WDRs, our discharge, because we go into federal waters, and the DDW is the Department of Drinking Water. They must recommend that we receive our permits. And finally, I put on there the reporting. This is always important. I had this discussion with a member of the public today. All the various reports that go out monthly, quarterly, annually, this is related to all the requirements. And these are many, many more than are even required in drinking water. Just showing our diligence, important for the public to see how much goes into making and serving recycled water. And in the next slide, please, I will go ahead and turn that over then to Frank. Thank you.
Thank you, Uzi. Good afternoon, directors. So this is our monthly update for potable water customer service for March. I just wanted to mention that we're going to start coordinating with California Water Service Company and the City of Lomita for upcoming work that Metropolitan Water District is planning in early 2023, and this is going to impact some of their service connections. For the Title 22 Purveyor Service Program, the second quarter sampling was conducted already. Moving on to the next slide, page 139. This is also our monthly update for the recycled water distribution system activities. This is the work that's implemented by our distribution operator, Infomark, with the exception of the site inspections that those are implemented by our operations technician. We didn't have any leak repairs conducted in March. Infomark took a total of 87 water samples. They exercised 21 valves and responded to a total of 878 dig alerts, and our operations technician conducted 75 site inspections. Moving on to the next slide, please. This is page 140, and this is a table of our the customers that are currently working to connect to recycled water. I wanted to highlight items 4 and 5, which are the Nash Street Exchange and Nash Street Parkways. The on-site work to install all the new recycled water irrigation systems has already been completed. However, these sites will be connected once the developer extends a recycled water pipeline on Nash Street. And these are anticipated to be connected in late 2023. Moving on to the next slide, please. This is page 141. And staff is continuing to work with the developer for the Intuit Dome. This site will use recycled water for dust control, irrigation, cooling towers, and also dual plumbing. And this is a photo of an inspection last month of new recycled water and potable water pipelines at the site. Next slide, please. And this is page 142. This is a table of that shows the current sites that are already connected to recycled water. However, they're making modifications. I wanted to highlight El Camino College and 2 additional sites from the list. Next slide, please. So we're continuing to work with El Camino College. They're constructing a new building called the Behavioral Social Sciences Building. Again, this site is currently connected to recycled water, so we're on site inspecting all the new water lines that are being constructed to ensure that they're labeled appropriately and there's adequate separation. Next slide. This is page 144. This is an existing site that also had modifications to their recycled water and potable water system. This is Center Street in El Segundo, and we wanted to just update the board that that work has been completed, then they reconnected that site to recycled water. Moving on to the next slide, please. This is page 145 of the board packet, and the remaining irrigation system to the Topgolf site in El Segundo, which is the parking lot area, was connected, as well as the entire golf course has already been using recycled water. So that site, that modification has been completed, and these are just some photographs of one of the actual supply line of recycled water to this site, and artist rendering of the overall site. Next slide, please. And then this final slide is to provide a brief overview of testing that's conducted to recycled water sites before they're actually connected to recycled water. And this is a requirement by the Department of Public Health. So during construction, staff and the Department of Public Health inspect the pipelines, as we went through in the previous slides. We want to make sure that they're adequately labeled. We want to make sure that there's enough separation, and we want to ensure that there's no interconnections between recycled water and potable water, or also referred to as a cross connection. And so these inspections are going on while the pipelines are being installed, but we also want to conduct a final test, which is called a cross connection, before the site uses recycled water. And so what this cross connection test entails is first testing all of the water system. So we first go through and we check all of the water systems to make sure they work. So we'll have a group of people split up and go through all the sites and test all the site fixtures, such as the drinking fountains, bathrooms, and make sure that everything works. And then the proposed recycled water system is supplied with a temporary source of potable water. So there's no testing with recycled water until the site is approved. And so the team will also go through the proposed, for example, irrigation system to make sure that all works. And then another round of testing is conducted. The potable water system that goes to all the potable water fixtures is left on. And then the proposed recycled water system, for example, the irrigation system, is turned off. And so the team will go through all the potable water fixtures and make sure that they are working. And if one doesn't work, then that's an indication that it may be supplied from for example, the irrigation system. So that's a red flag that there may be a cross connection. But if everything checks out, then the entire irrigation system is checked. That should be all off. And if an irrigation sprinkler head turns on, then that could also be an indication of a cross connection. And so that is the first part of the process. We basically go through that process again, just reverse the systems, turn one off and leave the other one on. And that process, again, has to go through for every site before it's approved to connect to recycled water. And so, and that same cross connection test is required if there's a modification to an existing site as well. And then for any dual pump facilities, which we do have the LA Air Force Base and El Segundo Fire Station, those cross connection tests are required every 4 years. So wanted to give an overview of some of the other additional safety procedures that are implemented before connecting a site to recycled water and any ongoing modifications. So that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Director Williams, do you have any questions?
Well, thank you.
Any other members of the board have questions, comments?
No, thank you. Good report, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Uzi.
Ditto.
Thank you, Uzi, Susanna, Frank. All of you did a good job. Okay, no questions on that. All right, we have one last item on the agenda, and that item is the information calendar item, and it's the recycled water master plan update. And looking at that, I don't know if you have any comments on that, Director Williams, but
No.
I do. I specifically asked for a very specific recommend or item to be brought forth, and it's sort of embedded in that presentation today, and that is to address Chapter 8 of the Recycled Water Master Plan report. But the presentation today goes on for many other areas and does not key in on that particular item. So I will defer hearing this item today. I would like that item brought back specifically, and then I will go back. Something's missing in apparently my ability to communicate, but the cycle master plan for us now on July 15th, 2021, February 9th, 2022, January 12th, 2022, and again today. And I think I've made specific comments as to how to bring this back. And I'll go back to the July 15th, 2021 meeting where we did have discussion of the recycled water master plan, and that was right after it had been completed. And at that particular meeting, Director Williams, there was discussion as to what would be the best way to review the master plan as opposed to just have it all presented in one session and to do it justice. And the way that it's written, there is an awful lot of information. I'm not quite sure it's a master plan as much as it is the conditions assessment with recommendations of potential projects. But at that time, Director Williams, as well as Director Houston and myself, suggested and requested that we review the elements of the recycled water master plan through a series of workshops that would be focused on specific items. And you can go back and watch the video of that particular committee meeting. And subsequent to that, I have asked that different sections of that master plan be brought before us. And to this day, that still has not occurred. For today, I had specifically asked several weeks ago that can we just have one focus on Chapter 8? And there are other chapters that need to be focused on. They do cover in-depth conditions and assessments of our facilities, talk about the investments that have been made, in some cases more recently, and that's discussed. And I think that's all to the better that we have a very good understanding of it. I have taken the time, I've spent a lot of time reading the master plan. And I think there is a lot of good information in that document and would like to proceed that way. So Mr. General Manager, as we move forward in the future, possibly for the next meeting, if you can bring that item back. And I would like to have consultant staff that is intimately familiar with the work that was put into the master plan to do the presentation. I understand that Mr. Gregorio Estrada is available to speak to a small section of that. And Mr. Estrada, I apologize to you and thank you for the time. I've noticed that you sat through this whole presentation. Possibly then next month you can join us and we'll complete that. And with that, that concludes my comments. Any other director comments?
No, thank you.
And just my own response, Chair Alvarez, we certainly will take this comments back and prepare for the next month's E&O committee with a presentation that's very narrow and specific on Chapter 8.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman? Desi?
Yes, sir.
This is Don Deere. My sound was off way back on item 5E. Could you tell me what was decided on 5E-A? What the decision was?
Dear, item 5D and E were considered together, and the direction was to move this forward to the board with a staff recommendation to go ahead and authorize the general manager to amend the agreement.
Stop. I'm wrong. I gave you the wrong letters. I know what happened on that one. I agree with what you're saying. It was 5A that I missed the decision on that. What did the committee do on 5A?
5A, we were going to, I'm sorry. 5A, we're going to take that back internally as a staff, request vendor bids to hold their pricing. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Am I, that is the right, okay. Yeah, so we're gonna ask the vendors to hold their prices for 6 months, which would allow for more time for me and staff to reach out to, I believe, Mobile Refinery, Torrance Refinery, and to notify them of the need to address the issues at the site, and to put them on notice that there would be a need to participate in that project jointly.
Thank you. And just for the committee's interest, back when I was a teenager, I worked at what was then called General Petroleum Refinery, which is now the one we're referring to, which is why I've explains the future explosions and leaks and things they had, probably because I worked there as a steam fitter apprentice.
That was known as a setup.
Yes.
Thank you, President Deere.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Okay, any other director comments? Director Houston, do you have a comment?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Okay, hearing none, then this committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to staff for putting together all the materials and providing great presentations today.